Let me tell you about the specific quality of silence that fell over the First Take studio after Shannon Sharpe said what he said, and the camera found Stephen A. Smith's face, because the silence is actually the most important part of the story, and I want to make sure you understand what made it different from the ordinary silences that appear in that studio every day. The ordinary silence on First Take is a produced thing. It is a pause inserted between a claim and a counterclaim, a moment of theatrical breath that signals to the audience that something significant is about to be said. It has a quality of preparation to it, a slight forwardness in the posture of whoever is about to break it. The silence I watched on my screen this morning had none of those qualities. It was the silence of an ending, not a beginning. It was the 5 full seconds during which Stephen A. Smith understood something, really understood it, not in the professional way where understanding is performed, but in the human way where understanding arrives and changes the landscape, and did not yet know what to do with the understanding. It was, in its way, the most honest thing I have ever seen on that show. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything, that like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. Let me take you back to the beginning, because the beginning explains everything about why the silence was what it was. Shannon opened the broadcast, not Molly, Shannon, before the standard format had fully established itself in the first breath of the first minute, by saying he had information. He did not dress it up. He said he had information that was going to require Stephen A. Smith to publicly account for everything he had said about the Golden State Warriors over the past several weeks. He said it with the specific economy of language that appears when someone has stripped a sentence of everything except what is necessary, because the information itself is sufficient and the delivery requires no additional architecture. Stephen A. built the counter-confidence immediately and comprehensively. He talked about his Warriors analysis, his read of their organizational position, the transitional questions around the core, the specific reasons he had said what he had said about Golden State's capacity to attract a player of LaMelo Ball's profile and timeline. He defended every part of it with the total commitment he brings to positions he believes in completely, and then he committed to the specific thing that was going to make the next 40 minutes of television so extraordinary. He said, "If you have something that proves I was wrong about the Golden State Warriors, I will resign from First Take live on air right now, not after the show, right now." He said it with the hands on the desk and the chest forward and the eyes steady, the full physical vocabulary of a man who believes so completely in his position that the stakes feel safe rather than reckless. Shannon turned to Molly with the smile that had been on his face since the broadcast began, the specific smile that only exists when a person has been waiting for the moment when the smile is finally appropriate to show and has arrived at that moment. He said, "Roll the tape." What the production ran was from 18 days prior. Stephen A. Smith at this desk saying with absolute unambiguous clarity that the Golden State Warriors were not positioned, not suited, and would not and could not attract a player of LaMelo Ball's caliber. He said the organizational moment was wrong. He said the timeline didn't align. He said the situation in Charlotte pointed nowhere near San Francisco. He said, and here is the word that was going to matter most, the specific and absolute and merciless word. He said it would never happen, never. The clip was 22 seconds long. Every second of it was precise. There was no mercy available in the language. He had said what he said. The clip ended. Shannon said in the conversational tone of someone reporting something they have already processed rather than something that still surprises them. "My sources confirmed that LaMelo Ball is essentially finalized with the Golden State Warriors." He said it the way you say things that are simply true. The camera found Stephen A. 5 seconds. I counted them. 5 seconds of Stephen A. Smith's face on live television doing what it almost never does, which is simply exist in an experience rather than perform one. The expression was not theatrical shock. It was not the raised eyebrow of a man preparing his counter. It was the specific, contained, completely human expression of someone who has just had the experience of hearing the thing they said would never happen confirmed as having apparently happened, while the man who confirmed it sits across from them waiting with perfect patience. It was extraordinary to watch. It was extraordinary because it was real. Then the work began, and I want to be honest about something before I walk you through the recovery, which is that even when Stephen A. Smith is losing an argument he cannot ultimately win. Watching him try to win it is genuinely worth your time. He is too intelligent and too skilled to simply surrender, which means what you get when he has to navigate an untenable position is an education in what professional verbal intelligence looks like when it is working at full capacity under real pressure. He started with the temporal framing. Statements made in a specific information context must be evaluated against that context. Circumstances evolved, the landscape changed in ways that were genuinely difficult to predict from the outside. His analysis had been correct based on what was available. He made this with fluency and speed, the way you make an argument you have had to make before and have refined through repetition. Shannon said, "You said never, a player of LaMelo Ball's caliber. You said the Warriors would never attract him. That's not a landscape argument. That's a never argument." Stephen A. tried the rhetorical register defense. The sophisticated listener understands never as emphasis rather than literal prediction. Absolute language in sports analysis is a rhetorical device rather than a prophecy. The clip stripped context from a statement that required context to be properly understood. He built this case with real skill, moving quickly enough through each component that the gaps in it were not immediately visible. Shannon said, "Molly, did you understand his never to be rhetorical or literal?" Molly, "Literal." Shannon said, "I understood it as literal. The audience, I'm willing to bet, understood it as literal. So now I want to ask you, Stephen A., why was it literal then and not literal now?" The pause before this answer was longer than any of the previous pauses. It was the pause of a man who has run the available responses through his head and found that none of them fully work, and is now having to decide which one fails least completely. And Stephen A., to his significant credit, made the decision that cost him the most and gave the audience the most. He said, "Shannon, I was wrong." He said it clearly and without additional scaffolding. "I was wrong about this specific prediction. The Warriors are clearly capable of attracting LaMelo Ball, and I said they never would be, and I was wrong about that." Shannon nodded. He did not do anything theatrical with the moment. He just nodded, the single nod of a man who has received exactly what he came in to receive. And the studio, Molly, the crew, the ambient presence of everyone in that room responded with the specific energy that appears when something genuinely real has just happened on live television and everyone present is aware of it simultaneously. Now let me walk you through the actual basketball substance, because LaMelo Ball to the Golden State Warriors is a genuinely fascinating story with layers that extend well beyond the television drama that preceded its announcement. The Warriors are at a crossroads that everyone in the NBA understands, but that not everyone is willing to say plainly. The era of Steph Curry as the primary engine of a championship contender is in its final chapter, and whatever the franchise becomes after that chapter ends requires a player who can carry the offensive identity forward rather than simply fill a role within a system built for someone else. LaMelo Ball, at 24 years old, is the clearest available answer to that specific question, and the logic of the match between what the Warriors need and what LaMelo is becomes almost unavoidable once you examine it directly. Start with the system fit, because it is the foundation of everything else. The Warriors' motion offense, the movement, the off-ball action, the constant read and react decision-making that turns the whole into something greater than the sum of its parts, requires a player with specific qualities at its operational center. It requires a creator with elite vision, the ability to manipulate the defense through deception and misdirection rather than just physical advantages, and the improvisational intelligence to make the correct decision in the half-second window that the offense creates. These are exactly LaMelo Ball's qualities, not approximate versions of them, the actual specific things. His passing vision is the most naturally gifted in his draft class, and arguably in his generation. His ability to create advantages through pace manipulation and court vision rather than isolation athleticism makes him specifically suited to a system built around movement rather than a system built around letting one player break the defense individually. The Steph Curry dimension matters enormously here, and not just as a transition question. In the immediate term, the combination of Curry's gravity, the floor-distorting, defense-collapsing attention his shooting demands from every team he faces, and LaMelo's playmaking ability creates a specific and brutal problem for opposing defenses. Curry forces the defense to extend to the three-point line, regardless of where he is, which creates gaps in the interior and at the weak side. LaMelo's court vision finds those gaps before the defense can close them. The combination means the defense is always solving two problems simultaneously, and solving two problems simultaneously in the time that the Warriors' motion offense allows means the defense is perpetually a half step behind. That is not a marginal advantage. That is the foundation of what made Golden State dynastically dominant in its peak years. The ability to create advantages that could not be defended by any single schematic adjustment. The succession question is where this acquisition becomes about the future rather than only the present. The Warriors need to know what they are going to be when Curry's active career ends. They need a player who can become the face and engine of the franchise in a way that maintains the identity of the organization, even as the roster changes around them. LaMelo at 24 in the Warriors system, learning from Curry and Draymond and the coaching staff that built the most successful offensive system of the modern era, represents a developmental trajectory that is almost unique in its potential. He is not coming to Golden State as a finished product. He is coming as a player whose ceiling has not been reached because the environment in Charlotte has not been sufficient to reach it, and who would find in the Warriors organization the specific combination of system, culture, and support that accelerates development toward what his talent profile suggests he can ultimately become. The Charlotte situation is the last piece that makes the timing right for this, and it is worth naming directly. LaMelo has been extraordinary for a team that has been unable to build anything around his extraordinariness, which is one of the most frustrating situations a talented player can find themselves in. He has led the team in scoring and playmaking. He has had the clutch performances, the game winners, the big game moments that a franchise player has. He has done all of this while the team around him has remained stuck in the specific hell of being not good enough to compete and not bad enough to tank and draft the pieces that might change the equation. The Hornets have apparently reached the point where even they recognize that the arrangement serves neither party as well as it should. And the Warriors, needing exactly what LaMelo is, at the moment when LaMelo needs exactly what the Warriors can offer, represents the kind of organizational alignment that the best trades in NBA history have always been built on. Stephen A., having made his admission, tried to recover some analytical ground by pivoting to questions about fit and timeline and cost. Shannon allowed this generously, the way he always allows the conversation to breathe once the central point has been won, and the rest of the segment became a genuine basketball discussion rather than an accountability exercise. Near the end, Shannon said, "I want to say one more time that Stephen A. Smith told all of you watching that this would never happen, and I want all of you to remember that the next time he tells you something will never happen. Stephen A." Smiled, no, the real smile, the one that acknowledges a point rather than performs acknowledgement, and said, "Shannon Sharpe, you are an infuriating man." Shannon said, "I know," and Molly called the break. And I sat in front of my television for several minutes after the segment ended, thinking about what I had just watched, which was one person being completely right and another person being completely wrong, and both of them handling it in a way that made you feel something genuinely human rather than something produced for consumption, which is honestly all you can ask of live television.